Now that we have enabled monitor mode in our wireless interface, we are able to capture all the Wi-Fi packets sent within our range. Even if the packet is not directed to our computer, even if we are not connected to the target network, and even without knowing the key or the password to the target network. So all we need right now is a program that can capture these packets for us. The program that we'll go on to use is called airodump-ng. It's a part of aircrack-ng, and it's a packet sniffer. So it's basically a program designed to capture packets while you're in monitor mode. So it'll allow us to see all the wireless networks around us. It gives all the MAC address around us, its channel, its encryption, the client's dot connected to it, and so on. Let me show you how we are going to use it. First of all, we have to enable monitor mode of our wireless interface. So if I run config command, it will show us all the wireless interface. And my interface is this. And it's in monitor mode. Now to run airodump-ng, just type airodump-ng, just type airodump-ng, and followed by your wireless interface. So the command is very simple. You just type command name airodump-ng and your wireless interface and hit enter. You can see it start working. It is discovering all networks around me and the useful information about them. This will run until you quit it. And to it you just type Ctrl-C. Basically you can quit any running command by typing Ctrl-C now, as we have stopped the program. Let's analyze the output so that we can analyze what it's showing us. First of all, we will see this column. You must be familiar with it. Basically this shows the name of the routers present around you. Now all information displayed here is very useful, you will know it as you go through the course. The first column, SID, shows the MAC address. The next is PWR, so it shows the signal strength or power of the network. The higher the number, the better signal we have. The next are beacons, so these are the frames sent by the network in order to broadcast its existence. So every network, whether it's hidden, always sends this type of frames, and basically it says to our wireless adapter that it exists. Next is the data column, it shows number of data packets, and these are the useful topics. We will talk about it later in cracking section. This column represents number of data packets that we collected. Next we have the channel on, which is the channel that the networks work on. Next we have maximum speed supported by the network. Next is the encryption, which is the most important column, and it shows us encryption used. Next is the cipher used in it. Next is auth, which is authentication used. We see how to use airodump-ng to list all the networks around us and display useful information about them. Usually we do this in order to see our target network, see the signal strength, see how far we are from it, and then start targeting this target network. Now in this example I'm going to assume that my target network is this one right here. And now that I have my target network and I have some basic information about it, let's see how we can run airodump-ng against this network. And this way we'll be able to gather more information about it. So to do this, first of all I'm going to have to write the name of my program, which is airodump-ng. Then go on to specify a specific BSS ID or a specific MAC address for airodump-ng to sniff data from. So my target network has been this idea of this. We can see it here and there on the SID. So I'm going to copy it and then I'm going to do --. Next I'm going to specify a channel airodump-ng to sniff on again. If you look under the channel column in here, we can assume my target network is on this channel, so I'm going to do a --. channel. I'm also going to tell airodump-ng that I want you to store all the data that you're going to gather for me in a file, so I'm going to see a --, right, and then I'm going to type a file name, and let's call this test. And at the end, as usual, I need to give it the name of my wireless adapter in monitor mode. So very simple command. Let's go over it one more time. We are doing airodump-ng, then giving BSS ID, then its channel, then we are storing it in a file called test, then at last my wireless interface. If you hit enter you can see some devices are connected to it. And basically anything that you see here in second section. These are the clients or the devices connected to this network. So right now we can see this network has 3 devices connected to it, and you can see the MAC addresses of these devices under the station, so you can see all of these devices connected to the same network. And under the station we have the different clients or different devices connected to this network. We can also see the power. So this is the signal strength of each of these devices. We can see the speed, we can see the amount of the last, we can see the amount of frames or packets that we have captured, and we can see if any of these devices are still probing for networks. So sometimes when you're on airodump-ng a guest or networks, you would still see this section, and you'd see that some devices are connected, and they're literally trying or looking for networks. So you'd see the name of the networks that they're looking for. Now if I had Control-C airodump-ng and you will quit, it will stop working. What I should have new files in my current working directory that contain the data that we just captured, because I remember when we were under command, we used the right option in here to store the data in a file called first. So if I just do this to list all the files in my current working directory, you can see I have 4 files, all of them stacked with test, but they all have different extensions. Now also notice that their airodump-ng automatically appended -0 to each of these files. So in the future when you go and try to use the capture file, now the main files are going to be using is the cap file. Again, this file contains the data that we captured during the period that airodump-ng was working on in here. And basically this file should contain everything that was sent to and from my target network, so it should continue or else chat messages, username is passwords, or anything that any of these devices did on the internet. Because anything that they have to do will have to be sent to the rafter. As we've seen before. The only problem is if you look at the encryption in here, you can see that my target network uses WPA2 to encryption. So all of the data sent between the router and the clients is encrypted. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to use a tool called Wireshark to analyze the data. And don't worry about how to use Wireshark. We all talk about it in details later on. Right now I just want to make sure that you understand the idea that now we're able to capture all these packets. The problem is these packets are encrypted, so I'm going to do Wireshark. And then I'm going to open my capture file. So I'm going to go to File, Open. I'm going to open it and I'll just put this in full screen. And as you can see, if you click on any of these packets, you can see we really have no useful data. You can see everything looks like gibberish. And we can't read a thing even though these packets might contain usernames, passwords or roles. The only useful thing that we can see here is and the main problem with this is the fact that the network is using encryption now. In the next section, or are going to be talking about how to break this encryption. And once we do, you'll see how we can see the passwords, the usernames in plain text. And you'll also see how we can map all of the computers on the same network, gather detailed information about them, hack into them, and do some really cool stuff. Now you should guess by everything that I said so far, if this network was an open network, if it was a network that does not use any passwords, then you wouldn't have been able to actually see all of URLs and everything that they do in here. But again, if you can connect to the network without a password, then you'll automatically be the post-connection section. Like I said, we're going to talk about some really cool attacks that you can do whilst you have the password or once you can connect to the network. For now, I just wanted to make sure that you understand why encryption is useful and why it's used and why we can't see much lecture. I'd like to talk about Wi-Fi bands. The band of a network defines what frequency it can use to broadcast the signal. This means it also defines the frequency that the clients or the computers need to be able to support and use in order to be able to connect to this network. The two main frequencies used in Wi-Fi networks are 2.4 and 5 GHz. Now, previously when we use airodump-ng, we were only sniffing on the 2.4 GHz frequency. You can see first of all my wireless adapter is in monitor mode. So if I just do airodump-ng, you'll see that I can get the wireless networks around me. But you might have noticed that you won't actually see all the networks around you. When you're on airodump-ng, I'm gonna Control-C this, and if I go here to my normal host machine, and it actually has a built-in wireless adapter. Now the network doesn't have to necessarily end in 5G, but here in India if a network broadcasts over 5 grams, it won't show it on name. And the reason for this is because airodump-ng is only sniffing on 2.4 GHz frequency. So if you do this and you don't see all the networks around you, or if you're sniffing on your own network, what you don't see all the clients in your network. It's possible that you're out there is broadcast in over 2 bands over 2.4 and 5 GHz. And if you're not seeing the router at all, if you're not seeing the network, then the router may be broadcasting 5 grams. Now this doesn't mean that your wireless adapter is not good. It just literally means that this adapter is not able to see 5 GHz frequency. It's just outside of its limit, outside of its reach. The main problem with 5 GHz is that there are a lot of wireless adapters that can see it and can communicate with it, but not many of them support monitor mode and packet injection. So you might see me and other people recommending wireless adapters like Alpha AWS. This is my most favorite wireless adapter. But the problem with that adapter is it doesn't pick up 5 GHz frequency, so it doesn't mean that that adapter is bad. It just means that it can't see 5 GHz frequency. Like I said, there aren't many wireless adapters that support Wi-Fi 5 GHz. But I have an adapter here. This supports both 2.4 and 5 GHz. It's not as good as the alpha, but it does the job. I'm not going to talk a lot about what wireless adapters do, but in this lecture, I want to show you how to sniff and discover a 5 GHz frequency networks, and then so that you can use all the attacks that you've learned in my other lecture and in my previous videos with 5 GHz networks. So the adapter that I'm using right now supports 5 GHz, but as you can see I still can't pick up these networks because I need to specifically tell airodump-ng that I want you to listen on 5 GHz frequencies and 5 GHz channels to do that. All we have to do is just to airodump-ng like we always do, and then we're going to use a new argument that we haven't seen before. And this argument is called band and we're going to tell it that I want you to sniff on band A. And that's the band that supports 5 GHz frequency. And then I'm just gonna give it the name of my wireless adapter and monitor mode which is WLAN 0. So the command is very simple, it's very similar to what we've used before, and all we have to do is just type airodump-ng followed by the band, and the band that we want to use is A. And we're following that with our wireless interface, so I'm going to hit enter, and as you can see as soon as we have this, I'm actually just going to do Ctrl+C now cause you can see the results, you can see that we got much more networks right now, and we have the 5 GHz network. So we have this network and this network that we weren't able to see. And basically we're able to capture all the networks that use the 5 GHz frequency. Now what you can also do. Let me clear the screen. You can specify multiple bands using the band argument. So again using the same command instead of just saying band A we can do band A BG. And what this will do is it'll tell airodump-ng frequencies at the same time, so let me show you. To capture data on both 2.4 and 5 GHz, so as you can see right here recapturing some 2.4 GHz networks, and we're capturing 5 GHz networks as well at the same time. And we'll also be able to discover clients connecting to both bands. The only problem with using airodump-ng like this is first of all you need a powerful wireless adapter to do this. Also it'll be slightly slower than on this anything on one band, because when you're sniffing on two bands you have a lot of channels that airodump-ng has to hop on all of them and discover clients and networks broadcasting on these channels, so if you want quicker results, then you're better off just specifying the band when you want to sniff on 5 GHz frequencies and just not specify the band when sniffing on 2.4. But as you can see you can just run the command like so with band G, and this way you'll be able to capture data sent over 2.4 and 5 GHz frequencies. Also keep in mind in order to sniff data on 5 GHz frequency like I said your wireless adapter needs to be able to support this band. So simply adding the band argument will not work unless your wireless adapter can support and can sniff data on this band. One more thing that I want to note, I've actually said this before. If you run airodump-ng against a network and you see some devices missed, and then there is a high chance that these devices are connected over 5 GHz. Now before leaving this section and moving to the gaining access section where I'm going to teach you how to break the different encryptions and gain access to networks, I want to spend one more lecture talking about a really useful attack that still falls under the pre-connection attacks under this section. The attack that I want to talk about is the De-authentication attack. This attack allows us to disconnect any device from any network before it connected to any of these networks. And we need to know the password for the network to do this. We go on to pretend to be the client we want to disconnect. Why change in our MAC address to the MAC address of that client and tell them that I want to disconnect from you. Then we're going to pretend to be the router again by changing our MAC address to their out there as MAC address until the client that you requested to be disconnected. So I'm going to disconnect you. This will allow us to successfully disconnect or authenticate any client from any network. Now we're actually not going to do this manually. We're going to use a tool called aireplay-ng to do that. So if I just look for a test you'll see that I'm connected and I can look for things, I can use Google. So I have a proper working internet connection. Now we're going to come back here and we're going to use a tool called aireplay-ng to launch the De-authentication attack. So we're going to type the name of the program which is aireplay-ng. Well, going to tell it that I want to run a De-authentication attack. Then I'm going to give you the number of authentication packets that I want to send. So I'm going to give it a really large number so that it keeps sending packets to both thereafter and the target device, therefore I'll disconnect my device for a very long period of time. And the only way to get it back to connect is to Ctrl+C and quit the play energy. Next I'm going to give it aireplay-ng the MAC address of my target network. So I'm going to do a -a and give it the MAC address, which I'm going to copy from here. Then I'm going to use -c to give it the MAC address of the client that I wanted disconnect, and the client that I wanted to deconnect is this client right here. And finally I'm going to give it the name of my wireless adapter in monitoring mode. Now you can see this command is very simple. Now you can run the command like this. And in most cases it would work. But in very rare cases this command will fail unless airodump-ng is running against the target network. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my first terminal in here and I'm going to run airodump-ng, and I don't want to write anything to our file, so I'm going to remove the write argument and give my wireless interface. And then I'm just going to hit enter. We see how to do this. We spent a full lecture on it. That's why I did it very quick. First we will see in my device whether its internet is working or not, so we will do a test. You can see it's working successfully. Then I'm going to go back to the command that we wrote so far and I'm going to hit enter now. As you can see aireplay-ng, it's tell me that it's sending the deauthentication packets. And if I see my device you can see I have lost my internet connection. If I type test, it is not showing me any result. So the only way for me to connect back is if I go by key. If I quit this by doing Ctrl+C, quit this again. And now my machine should be able to connect back and restore its connection. This is actually very handy in so many ways. It's a very useful social engineer in cases where you could disconnect clients from the target network and then call the user and pretend to be a person from the IT department and ask them to install a virus or a backdoor, tell them that this would fix their issue. You could also create another fake access point and get them to connect to the fake access point and then start spying on them from that access point. And we'll see how to do that later on in the course. And you could also use this to capture the handshake, which is what happened in here actually. So like I said, this is a small attack that can be used as a clogging to other attacks,